Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Departments of Economics Demas Rampersad seminar series. My name is Joel Jordan, and I will be co-hosting for this afternoon. I would like to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Nicholas Hill. Dr. Nicholas Hill is a native of Canton, MS, with a strong belief in the value of educating the next generation of global leaders in business, especially those from the historically Black colleges. He has served in higher education for the last 15 years as both administrator and professor. His current research interest centers around contemporary issues in health, labor, and urban economics, with a strategic focus on African-American entrepreneurship rates. His research stream includes numerous peer-reviewed publications, book chapters, presentations, and fundings from grants. I would, at this moment, like to invite Dr. Hill to begin and to give, if he wants to, a further introduction and to start his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to come here today. I'm extremely thankful to the university, and I'm extremely thankful, Joel, for working with me today. This man here has worked magic over the last couple hours, so I do thank him. And also, I want to thank Dr. Conrad. He's a great friend of mine, and I am excited about what he is doing at the university. So today I want to take just the time that I have and get an opportunity to talk about one of the research ideas that I feel is beneficial to communities and communities in which we serve as well. I definitely am open to questions, ways to be better with everything that we're doing, and looking at ways to also partner with what we're doing. So for today, the title of this presentation will be Entrepreneurship as a Catalyst for Economic Growth in Communities. I want to make sure we phrase it or contextualize it as a discussion centered around Black economics. I currently serve as Dean of the School of Business at Claflin University. It's located in Orangeburg, South Carolina. This university is top 10 HBCUs in the country. This university is also the largest HBCU within South Carolina right now. So I think that it's an opportunity that I think I can help with the mission. There we go. Let me give a little bit of professional introduction. I appreciate Joe for what he's done. I am a graduate of Tougaloo College that's located in Mississippi. I also graduated with my master's in economics at Howard University, and I've received my PhD at Jackson State University. And as you already know, entrepreneurship, informal economy, labor economics, health economics, these are some areas that I am interested in researching in. Like you said, originally from Canton, Mississippi, married with 4 boys. And as also indicated, I am passionate about the success of the next generation. And I am committed to their success from an economic standpoint, as well as an educational outcome standpoint. And moreover, I'm committed to the mission of the HBCU, and I'm excited about working with any stakeholder associated with it. So now the question is, why entrepreneurship? Well, the basis of this presentation today will show you that entrepreneurship helps cities. Also, and I think we already know, is that cities in general, and cities is synonymous with communities, differ in their racial and ethnic configuration. And entrepreneurship rates vary amongst these different racial, and ethnic groups. Thus, when we look at it, cities differ in how entrepreneurship helps them. So our research will try to examine what is the impact on communities based on these different population differences. And in particular, we'll be focusing on one minority group. So some of the takeaways that I hope that you receive from this presentation is the fact that, yes, entrepreneurship does help communities. It leads to increased financial independence. It can increase government revenue in the long run for sustainable growth. And when it's linked correctly to economic development and then through an area, it can be a catalyst for growth in areas that have high underrepresented population or high poverty restricted areas. Now, like we said, we're talking about one group. I'm going to focus mostly on the Black entrepreneur for a second. And when we look into the literature, one of the things that is true is that Blacks in general have the lowest and the highest rate of entrepreneurship. So this is an interesting situation that is showing up in the literature. One, the rate of Black entrepreneurship sometimes lags behind those of non-Black. So sometimes it's not necessarily indicating of the actual rate. And right now, when we look at the approximate rates, there's 4% of Blacks that are self-employed compared to 12% of whites. So this number is kind of distorting with regards to the fact of how many people own their own or business or what we consider to be self-employed. And then the other literature seems to suggest that a lot of the Black entrepreneurs who find their own business tend to be less successful than what we call the non-Black. So that tends to discourage others from getting into the field. However, when we look at the literature as well, it also indicates that entrepreneurs have the higher interest in activity than all other groups within the US. This includes, that new ventures that they initiate are almost 3 times more than those of whites. Black women, more in particular, are more likely than any of the other counterparts to start a business. Black women have actually started business at 6 times higher than the national average. And also young adults, right, which are 18 to 64, are 50% more likely than white adults to attempt to start their own business. So in the literature, you see we have this constant argument that's going on between Black entrepreneurs having a low and high rates associated with it. But yet, one of the things that we always find, and it's hard to find, is how are they represented, or they are underrepresented within entrepreneurship. So what may explain this, right? We talk about this. What are some of the issues that come up? Well, they say that Blacks are highly engaged in what we call nascent entrepreneur activity than all other races. Now, when we typically look at entrepreneurship participation and what makes success within that entity, we look at these factors, which include personal capital, education, employment, the age, gender. All of the entrepreneurship literature kind of looks at that as contextual factor. But when we start to look at ways that we can kind of examine it, let me paint it in the fact of that nascent versus how they contextualize. First, within the formal economy, we consider the formal economy this to be business activities that are what we call legitimate, legal. They have license, highly regulated, what we call tax paying, high transparency with regards to their business activity. But there's also this other group that shows up in the informal economy. Now, one of the things is that the literature very rarely takes the examining of this type of economy. So that's why I think that what we're working on and what we're looking into is highly advantageous for the future research. And that's the informal economy. Sometimes, some words that come up is it's legitimate, but it could be illegal, right? Non-licensed, non-regulatory, low transparency, not tax paying. That's what they kind of think within this this economy. And so now we have where we split it up into two different parts, where it's illegitimate and illegal, or illegitimate and legal, meaning, and so a good way to make an example of that is someone who has a restaurant, or someone who bakes pies and delivers in the community. They have a business that they own and operate, and they're running, people are paying. It's a legitimate business, meaning they're not selling any illegitimate substance, but they haven't gone through the health department to get all of the license and things like that. That's what makes it what we call those operating in an informal way. So now we have that entrepreneurs in the literature have sometimes had all of these many faces, and they fall into all of these different spaces of where either they can operate both as a formal economic entity and then informal economic entity, some of which are some of the companies who have lawsuits associated with hiring workers, not paying them correctly. Those are those who kind of go into both. They have a formalized business, but they're doing it in a informal way and have certain levels of, I would say, fuzziness with regards to the illegitimate activity. So what has been said in the literature about the informal economy, that is kind of murky sector. It is kind of like the shadow economy. They've actually called it the underground economy. Sometimes, people look at it from the standpoint of cash to cash or unregistered economy. One of the things that they've also sought to suggest is that, wait a minute, all of these different type of economic activities have some form of informal activity that are going on. And so we must be mindful of that, right? And so some studies have seemed to suggest that 8% of the US, almost 75% of Great Britain, 10% of France, and so forth. And then in some cases, 25% of Russia and 50% of Purdue involved in this type of informal economy. And so this is good to look at our community to see what is going on there. So why do people choose the informal economy alternative? Well, these are the group of people who would be able to choose it. When we look at high income people, one of the things that we see is that they do it by choice, right? There are economic opportunities to increase their wealth and access resources. There are social reasons why they kind of will go through and participate. And then a lot of them kind of do it to, when you have the money, you kind of escape some of this corruption and bribes that is sorted with it. And then also to exploit all of these opportunities that are associated with the formal employment and things, similar to hiring workers at lower wages than what you're supposed to due to their maybe citizenship status and other type of things that go on already with the economy. Middle income, they do it by choice to reduce the formal employment. And then also a lot of times we don't really in the middle income bracket, if you think about it, I'm just doing this kind of as a hobby. I don't want it to be an actual business. So, hey, I will, perform this for you for a price, but it's not like I'm formalizing it, right? So it's from that standpoint. Now, when we look at those with who have income challenges in the low income sector, A lot of times they do it out of necessity, survival. This is also the main source of income. There's also a large scale of discriminatory practices by loaning and funding agencies, and that leads to a lack of capital. This also associated with there's lack of employment opportunities within this particular space where they live. They want to try to work to get out of a situation and transform what they're currently looking like. So they do it from that standpoint. It could be out of hobbies as well. And also some of the examples, in those areas that you're less likely to employ, they do it from that standpoint, similar to house cleaning or like a plumber, or those who are like electrician and things like that. And so there's a very amount of reasons why this occurs amongst this group. Now, when we start to look at rural areas, more informal work takes place there than in urban areas. And then also, when we look at some of the urban areas, it's found that they did it just completely out of choice, right? They just wanted to do it. So people in general are both skeptical of the institutions. They're uncertain about what type of benefits that the formal sector kind of provides. If you look at it, they don't actually consider the cost benefits of jumping in and doing so. So they kind of halfway in, halfway out with regards to starting their own business. And then also, there's all of these hurdles associated with registering, license, and getting access to, actual businesses and to really develop it. So instead of going through that, what ends up happening is a lot of times they go into what we call the informal economy. And then also, it's easy to start certain businesses due to these low barriers. So it's quickly, at certain degree, some of the businesses that start up that we would consider to be part of the informal economy are those that are there at the low entry to create that business. Now, what are the willingness to convert to the formal economy? So if you think of it like this, is that you have a large amount of people who may be in this informal economy in operating and doing very well. But what is the incentive for them to convert to the formal economy? Well, there are those that are actual, what they call it, knowledgeable that they're operating in the informal economy and they're entrepreneurs. Well, they'll be harder to convert, right? But they're ones that just doesn't have the some of the required connections in order to know what the difference between the two. These are the ones, in our opinion, that would be easier to convert. They also suggest that urban entrepreneurs who operate independent of customers and suppliers are easier to convert to because they got established business and processes associated. So in particular, I'm gonna be focusing on this. What about Blacks in particular with regards to propensity for the IE? Well, one, let's look at where they're living because we already laid out from the standpoint of the different areas. Proportion of Blacks living in inner cities is always high. And so because of that, we also have this unique market that offers robust opportunities for any entrepreneurs, who kind of reside there, meaning that I can, at the game, I can pick up a box or a bag of water and sell each individual water there, but I don't have necessarily a license to sell goods and services in that area. I'm just outside the stadium selling that. Well, to me, that is the same as in the informal economy, but it's highly innovative. You're taking advantage of your opportunity that is kind of there. So maybe this may be an opportunity for us to kind of really look, as Crump said in 2013, to look at how we can link Black entrepreneurs to the different types of market opportunities within the city and convert them over to the formal economy. So one of the things that he kind of establishes with this push and that we're looking at is how does all of this stuff, population density, a lot of Black distrust or trust within the institution, trading differences, corruption, perception of differences, and retail scarcity. How does that start to push people from the formal economy into the informal economy? And are there ways and tactics that this can hurt for economic growth in a given area? So one of the things I wanted to bring up as an example before we get into some of the statistics associated with it is Canton is a small town right outside of Jackson, Mississippi, where I was basically raised and everything. So a little bit of this is, I guess, touching with my hometown. So I get a chance to show what the area looks like and the opportunities associated with it. So one of the things about Jackson, Mississippi is it was one of the top 200 places within the Forbes magazine. It was the 5th best place to start a business. It was also one of the #1 places in Mississippi for business and careers. And then it was the best place, one of the top, not top 10, but 11th in 2009 to launch your business, right? And so it also was ranked as one of the top cities for Black-owned businesses within just the US in particular. So when we look at the population, they have roughly around 173,000, give or take. You know, that may change as of now. Black population is about, in the state of Mississippi, rather, I believe it's about 137. I'm sorry, in the city is about 137,000. And so Black entrepreneurs are only about 5,000, and Black-owned firms are about 6,000. This is according to the statistics that we have. So now when we look at, based on the US Census, what's going on, in the US, the total amount of business is roughly around 27 million as of 2007. Black-owned firms was 1.9, and then white-owned firms was 22. In Mississippi, you can see, which is about has 37% Black in the population. Total amount of businesses, Black-owned, which is 40,000, and then white-owned, which is 170,000. When we look at Jackson, you see how the percentages change, the total amount of businesses. But look here, I told you that we had a large amount of the population, which is 78% of the population. Let me use my pen just to see. So we're 78% of the population. Yet, if you look at this statistic, it doesn't add up to how much and how many Black firms that are located. There's not a nice proportion associated with that. So that allows us to say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Is there opportunity here? What's going on? So when we look at that, when we break it down by per 1,000 Black-owned firms, in Jackson, there's only 47 per 100, per 1,000. However, there's 269 per 1,000 or white-owned firms, which is a little bit disheartening given what it should be. And what I mean by what it should be, given the population, if we think about equal dispersion of that. When we look at the ranking, based on Black populations in the 10 highest, as you see, they're there. And then as you come down, these are how the percentage of Black population. So you would assume that entrepreneurship rates will be higher. And then you also would assume that Black ownership and things will be higher in this area. So what is it that we are concerned with that? Is cities with higher Black population proportion have more informal economic activity than cities with lower Black population. Cities with higher Black populations collect fewer total revenues than cities with lower Black population. And also, and what I mean by that is also in licensing fees and permits for, their business operation. So how are we going to go about doing this? We looked at the top 100 cities. We ranked them by the Black population. We utilized this particular report. We also focus on the per capita license permits and fees associated with these business startup. We looked at per capita total city revenue, and then also the individual per capita income associated with it. And so we're looking at how that relates to the per capita city GDP that's in the area. So in order to create this informal economy index, one of the things that we look at is how each city's GDP is measured by all the level of economic activity, whether it's in the first, second, or third, or fourth iteration. What I mean by that is that if someone was to exchange the dollar, there is some portion of it that's captured in tax. If it was in the informal economy, that person, even though they got their money, has to go purchase some particular good and service. And that has to be taxed. And if they're doing that illegally, then it has to be done on the next one. So regardless, GDP will capture some level, if not all, of the economic activity in the area. Any difference between the actual GDP and the expected GDP, which we denote would be the residual, is due mainly to the participation in the informal economy. So based off of the amount of activity that is captured, based off of given the what it should be, we're able to say, that difference is considered to be what's going on in the informal economy. So from the residuals, an index can be constructed that ranks cities by the intensity of the informal economy. And this way we can look at that ranking as a way to see whether or not there's a larger scale. We utilized, and similar to the technique that Granger and Bloomquist in 1999 did with the quality of life index, that looked at the residuals of income and housing prices to rank the amenity index for quality of life. So in the simple terms, the model equation is your GDP is a function of your expected GDP. And so we expect that our GDP is based on the revenue that the city brings in, the fees, and then also the income that's associated with the economic activities in the area. We also expect that the residual associated with it is the difference between that particular GDP, the expected minus the actual that's associated with it. And so that gap there that we're talking about associated with it is going to provide us a index. So within our context, one of the things that when we were able to look at these cities, there was a few because of lack of information that was provided were fell out. So we were able to have roughly around 93 cities that were there. One of the things that we also see is the difference in the average amount of revenue, fees, and just your typical statistics that's there. Also, I want to draw attention to the vast difference in the population mix of these top 100 cities. There are some which has roughly 82.7% of the population that is Black, and then you have some that has very little, which is less than 1% that is Black as well. For our first regression, when we start to look at calculating everything, we start to see that revenue is highly or positively related and statistically significant with the level of GDP in a given area. We also see that fees, even though it's not significant, can have a negative impact on the revenue associated with it. And then also income, more income that's in the area, you can have associated with correlated also with a higher expected GDP there. And so when we start to look at the residuals, after we run that, we take the residuals and we start to look at the means. We run the residuals against the Black population in those type of cities just to see how that actually works out. When we pull the residuals from the previous slide, this one here, we take all of the what we call the equation, and when we take the GDP expected minus the actual expected GDP, we're able to get the residuals, we rank them, and this is kind of how that kind of looks from that max. We utilize that to run it against the Black population. Now, why do we do that? Well, our thing is to suggest whether or not the percentage of Black population is related to this informal economy activity that we suppose is captured in the residuals. And so when we run it against that, what we found is that we have a small significance, but a positive indication that roughly 4% of the population, or as we increase the Black population by 4%, it's an increase in the level of what we call informal activity, informal economic activity. So to our results suggest that yes, there are barriers that are there for people to formalize their business correctly, but also there's opportunities here that's associated with it. And so one of the things we see is that that's roughly that for every, there's basically like what 4% of the population that's operating in that type of economy. So one of the things that we also kind of look at is, all right, how does the revenues and fees line up associated with the Black population? Basically, how does the Black population depend? How do revenue and fees depend on whether or not you have a Black population area? Now, only thing I can show is that that at this time that there is a direct correlation between the two, but it's not statistically significant. So that means that there may be some more research that is needed and really get into what's going on in certain cities. Now, if you notice, based on the distribution, we had some cities that had 0.5% Black population versus 82% Black population. So this also means that, you know, there may be a little bit of noise that is going on, and it is hard for us to really start to gauge. So we may need to either get more or truncate it down to the level that we're looking at. So why am I actually here to help give you this presentation? Well, I think that there's opportunities that are here that are linked to economic growth in the area. One, given the support found by this hypothesis, we believe that, you know, if you have programs and at the university level as well, that starts to convert entrepreneurs over to the formal economy, this will help benefit local economies through more taxes, revenue generated, and other things. And I actually think that in general, this happens all over. Remember, in the original slides, we did mention that informal economic activity is not subject to a race, it's subject to everybody. The focus of this research is I'm focusing on this particular race because I think it's linked to how we as institutions can help grow and provide some sort of resources that benefit the communities develop. So the program specifically targeted to urban and these regions. Now, how do we know that this is the case? Well, there's this notion of opportunity recognition. And I think that this is a avenue that can be learned associated with what's going on. I use the example of the game day and a person selling water bottles. That's an opportunity. There's a game going on. People are walking and they need to have water. There's opportunity. How do we start to formalize a business? Apply for the license to sell, and that way you can have more opportunities for economic growth. One of the other things is that based on the research, our social network is not big enough associated with sharing ideas and understanding the opportunity. So forums like this one, as well as other forums on campus and in the community that allow for one to grow their social network, is big for having impact. And then the other thing is the financial markets, to make sure that we fully understand how the different financial markets work. It's my hope, well, I know in some of the US cities, if there's a Black, highly dense populated area, there are not enough banks that are there to not only loan capital, but give advice and all of these other investments into the community. So learning about more financial markets and how that kind of works can help. And then also, what are some of the hidden consequences associated with being in an informal economy? I tell students all the time, in particular, is that if you're able to file your taxes, you have a trail to where when you go to the bank, you're able to ask for money for expansion. The first thing they will ask is, how many units have you sold? Do you have any tax receipts? So doing business in that way, where it's not just like a cash economy or something like that, has benefits long-term associated with how your business can grow. All right. Also, it is our understanding that, you know, what kind of worked from an institutional standpoint is, how do you start to have these certificate programs in different ways to bring people from the community in? I think that faculty like that, which is at UWI, is perfect for training about these key concepts and training about the ways to help people better themselves and get them accustomed to how to grow their business within their formal and economy. So why does this matter and how does this actually help? Well, one of the things is that the more formal businesses that we have there, the more taxable revenue that can be generated. And these increased expenditures can lead to different expenses that the government can use for education in particular, as well as infrastructure development. It has already been researched that businesses owners hire people who look like them. So in communities of color, one of the things that would occur is that it would decrease the unemployment and increase the productivity of workers in that area. Also, when businesses are thriving in the area, one of the things is that people don't leave that city. So one of the things that we have within certain cities, especially like that of Orangeburg, where Claflin is located, is you have flight of people going to different areas. More businesses, as they start to grow, better it kind of develops. And then so one of the things is that when you have a good entrepreneur business, some of the things that happen is it helps with some of the slowdowns, help to slow down the some of the economic growth that's associated with the economy. So this will allow for economies to grow and flourish a lot more. Quick story is that where I'm located, right down the road, is the city of Charleston, South Carolina, and they have boomed. Their economy is booming. They are the #1 place for, well, not #1, #4 for innovative entrepreneur startups. And so because of that, they made themselves friendly. A lot of people have located there, even companies, Boeing airline, even though, Boeing, I know about the planes that are going on now, but it's a way to drive what is going on within the city that leads to more big companies starting to notice that. Another place is Austin, Texas. They have big tech firms. Boom, they start to grow. Silicon Valley, all of that stuff is going on. So I just wanted to make you aware is that the more entrepreneurship is there, it can circumvent some of the economic slowdowns and growth. And also, lastly, is one of the things is that I think that we can link everything that is in the Black community that helps with keeping the wealth that's there. Now, I'm gonna ask Joel. I see I got some questions here. Do you want me to answer some of this questions right now, or wait till after? That doesn't matter. All right. Okay. Well, we'll keep going. No, after presentation. Perfect. All right. So the future direction. One of the things that I wanted to bring in is that how do we start to look at this from the standpoint of around the world, different ways that we can get into these areas, and how does the economy similar to what's going on here in the U.S. How can we get that? And then also, how can we get with qualitative studies of these program participants and get them involved in not being what we call unwitting informal economic participants with that. So one of the things that I think is important is that, you know, when we look at where your university is located and just the areas, what has been said about the entrepreneurships activity there. For one, there are high rates of early stage entrepreneurial activity, right? So a lot of people have this startup. The countries have expected lower prevalence of growth expectations and newly established businesses within that space. Also, in the poor sections, as it said by Boxell in 2003, was that that one of the issues that comes about is that it suffers from the government offering greater support for these other businesses versus what we call traditional white businesses versus those in the poor area. That's similar to here, where the government invests in one community versus another. And then also there is some hostility that is going on, or some what we call class or racial divides that's associated with Black community and that. So we can see that we have similarities within that particular space, but I think that when we start to look at it from our standpoint, maybe there's some shared techniques that we can be a part that help with how we can grow the economy. So one of the things that I want to make sure that we're aware of is that I want to make sure that it's understood that you know, we're not throwing any particular race under the proverbial bus. Once again, all particular groups participate some form in this economy. I'm looking specifically at this particular group as a way of igniting change and economic development within the community. I think that, you know, when we look at what HBCUs do and how they can benefit from informing students about some of the benefits of being in the formal economy versus informal economy, it's always good. And then also learning how urban settings and how minority communities in particular utilize this and really start to teach against the distortions that, hey, you can't be successful with this. And moreover, look at it from the standpoint of distortions that hurt learners. And then, you know, it kind of renders what we do as far as business schools and those who promoting, you know, economic entrepreneurships as irrelevant. At this time, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for allowing me to speak. I am indeed thankful once again, and I'll try my best to hear some questions. Is that correct, Joel? I'll just go through the list.
Yes, you can go through the list. I'd just like to also kind of thank you for that presentation in terms of giving us the American experience, and also in terms of seeing how it has some links also with the Caribbean experience. I found it very interesting, the concepts of legitimate but illegal and illegitimate but legal. I know that a lot of the questions that came into the chat, we'd like to thank everyone for sending in their questions. You are free to continue to send in your questions, and we could take the questions at 3 at a time. Over to you, Dr. Hill, in terms of the first 3 questions.
All right. There was a question about statutory payments be considered a risk to formal employment. And so I guess you meant statutory payments from the standpoint of what they call it, income payments, or welfare payments and stuff like that, I'm hoping. But really the whole notion is that I don't necessarily believe that, even though that's what the literature sometimes says, right? There was the thought process that if you were to give someone any type of income, they would not work. That was this theory that they suggested. I believe that in this last 2 years, that has been debunked. I know in particular with the, I don't know if y'all follow our presidential politics, but with President contender Andrew Yang, who had the dividend benefits, and there was a lot of economic rationales that went against that theory. So I don't think it would be a risk. I think that the only risk associated with is that I wouldn't necessarily work at a grocery store. I would utilize and work in my own business and maybe create entrepreneur activity. So that's my take. But quickly, I disagree with a lot of things, and you definitely can disagree with me on the issues as well. Second question, I noted that a lot of sources cited are more than 10 years old. Dr. Hill comments on participating in informal economy has evolved digitally informal age as it has become more of the norm. People engaged in side hustles are becoming full-time entrepreneurs in non-traditional careers, YouTubers, influencers, gigs, economies. So to your point, that is correct. There is limited to not a lot of literature on Black entrepreneurship. People talk about entrepreneurship just in general, but they don't really talk about those who are Black self-employed. Furthermore, when we look at the data that's collected within the recent couple of years, they've taken out what they call some of the data points associated with measuring Black self-employment. So a lot of it is by, convenient sample, and the fact that I do have that. However, I do think that you do have a point that we're in a digital age, and that everybody can be what we call a influencer and have their social media outlets. The question that I believe is much more important is, how do you turn that into economic activity to where you can formalize your business, right? And you can start to capitalize on income that's associated with it. And I think that you can do that better when you can formalize it, right? When you actually have a legitimate business venture where you can expense certain things. Do Black entrepreneurs have a greater propensity for informal activity, primarily, secondarily, or tertiary types of production? Can you comment why there is a preference for that? Well, just in general, from the our urban community settings, there are historical and just intended barriers for minorities to get into certain industries, right? So there's only a certain type of industry that that are available at the large times, and that we can kind of formally kind of see. So to your point, I think that the reason for a lot of activities within the informal economy is due to some of historical natures and the systematic and social barriers that are associated with what opportunities that are there for Blacks. In particular, a lot of the sales and the service related industries, we have found that those who are minority and Black in particular go into, like your electrician, your plumber, those who may be in landscaping. You would even also say those who are into house cleaning and things like that. Those service related, and any goods would be like restaurants, small restaurants. But it's hard to get a gas station, right? It's hard to purchase a bank and get into that type of arena. So you don't see a lot of that. As entrepreneur is an engine towards economic growth, what programs do you think government should aim to implement in order to educate and encourage individuals to start new business operations? This is a great question, because I think that, I think we need to have more support, and from what we're seeing is that we got to have institutions or these conduits that are educating people in the community about ways and the best ways to do entrepreneurship. Anybody would say, all right, I'm gonna go out and sell, but they don't know how to formalize and apply for a license, right? How do you start to do your taxes for the business? So I would like to suggest that the government's role is to help support institutions, the educational institutions, by allowing them to do more training in the communities which they serve. If I was, government, which, they won't ever let me elect me, I would do some of the barriers with the paperwork and fees associated with creating your own business to make it more easier, rather, for persons to do it. It says, how important do you believe the lack of financing is to increasing Black entrepreneurship? So I think financing in particular leads to the community not growing. So finances is, to me, directly linked to growth of the community. I think, a lot of people do have ideas and want to start their own business, but I am not sure that the businesses can grow without financial support, right? And things of that particular nature. And so when we think about finances, we think about also banks, and in our community where there is a large amount of Black population, there are areas where there isn't a bank. And so they have to drive a nice little bit to go to the bank. So if you think about it from a standpoint of cash carrying or even deposits and things like that, that becomes a problem. The new and upcoming thing is what we call Fintech, right? Everybody kind of knows about that. It's where you have financial technology that is prevalent and is able for someone to do on their mobile devices and things like that. I'm hoping to hear how the informal economy can thrive in context of the pandemic. All right, that's a great one. Also, there are any people that can handle the problem of unassigned capital, family land in Trinidad and Tobago, which no one has a deed. Oh, okay. So I will say this: the pandemic is, is a whole nother set of economic reality that I think that we have to look at. I do appreciate what the university is doing and how you're working, like you're utilizing Zoom, and you're utilizing all the technology to reach and educate students. So it's things like this that can help with the informal economy. But the thing is, how do we start to train them on all of these different methods and ways. So I will say that I do believe that there is a way during the pandemic, but I just, it's kind of hard. It just becomes, what is the opportunity that comes about and how can we recognize it? Are there any initiatives that you can think of federal government in the home state has been implemented to curb and transform? Yeah, so one of the things that certain cities have is they will have what we call similar to what we call a tax-free day. They also will have register your business for free day, right? And so that way, all of those fees associated with starting your business, you can forego that. There are what we have community colleges or two-year colleges that offer the certificates in entrepreneurship that allow them to learn how to start up their business and all that they're needed. And they partner with what we call the Small Business Administration. And they are linked to help the government that helps with how you're supposed to start your business, giving you what we call federally low rate loans for your business and things like that. So there are ways that they can kind of get in there. All right, what are the entrepreneurial opportunities which are present by industry? And you say 4.0, industry 4.0, can you give me which particular reference to the Caribbean is the current ICT landscaping enabling to entrepreneurs who would like to pursue opportunities presented by the industry 4.0? I would also suggest that, I'm not that familiar with 4.0. Let me just say that from the jump. But just in general, the entrepreneurial opportunities is based on what the customer needs or what people are looking for and what's available. And I think that, from my standpoint, just look around and see what type of activities that are going on. The notion is that there's a difference between what actually is going on and what can be and what is measurable. And so what we're trying to do is understand that and trying to break those barriers down to where those who are in activities can actually, we can consider be formal. The fourth industrial revolution, ongoing automation. Oh, the automation of factory. So once again, we have barriers to entry into certain industry, right? So if you wanted to start your own car manufacturer, there's a high kind of barriers associated with, for example, testing the car, getting that much fuel, that much metal. You have to be licensed to drive all that over there. Where are you housing? There's a lot of barriers associated in this particular case with entrepreneurs. That's all I got here. What are some other questions?
Yeah, we have some other questions because it seems that the chat has been kind of blowing up while while you've been answering the questions. But one in particular was asking what policy initiatives can help us better or a wider variety of direct online payment options for entrepreneurs, because it seems that there's a gap between what is used in the UK, the US, and the EU, and what is used in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, so I believe you're asking, one of these fintech questions, right? And what we call, what's that? E-banking, right? Is how do you start to get with understanding the commerce and payments for that? I dare not, and let me say like this, I dare not get into the argument of the Bitcoin. So please, I'm not over in the cryptocurrency world, right? But I would say is that we do have these conduits that are now starting to come along, and banks are starting to research different methods for the blockchain and cryptocurrency applications, right? So I think that we're moving there. However, it's going to be this slow because the question is how to regulate this, how do you protect it, and all of this stuff. So to your point, that is a difficult question, I would say, to address and answer. But I think being in the banking and finance industry, the easy the way you can make it accessible to individuals, the better it is associated with a commerce.
I think we have just one final question, and it has to do with what opportunities are there in decentralized finance for Black entrepreneurs seeking to raise capital?
Centralized.
Decentralized, yeah.
Decentralized. Okay, so what the research is showing is that for Black entrepreneurs, they've been doing crowdfunding from an urban perspective. What I mean by that is, you think about the whole notion of crowdfunding is you put up there, hey, I got this cause, please donate this money, and people log in and they link and give you money. But for most Black entrepreneurs, they would say, hey, I'm starting this business. Uncle, can I have $100 to help support? Or, hey, friend, I need $5 to get this. Or, do you mind donating to this? So we utilize our existing networks in order to raise capital. That's why, and one of the points that the literature is showing and that we're advocating is that we need to increase our social networks. There are a lot of venture capitalists that are available that want to invest in what you have to offer. So if possible, I would say is that we are utilizing our own networks and what we have available, but there's just not enough, as we say, readily available capital. We need to extend the social networks by which we're able to gain more revenue associated with it.
So I think that kind of brings us to the end of our questions for this afternoon. I want to thank you again, Dr. Hill, for giving us your time, giving us your expertise. The information you provided was very thought-provoking, especially as we consider entrepreneurship and in light of the pandemic. I would just like to thank the Demas Rampersad Committee for engaging you. That would be Dr. Darren Conrad, Dr. Reagan Dionanan, Dr. Altia Lafukat, and Dr. Roxanne Brazan. Those are the members of the committee. And I would also like to thank the audience for being attentive, for giving us some questions, some really hard questions at times. But I'd like to thank you all for coming out and being a part of our Demas Rampersad seminar. We most likely will have this is part of a series. So we would have Demas Rampersad's in the upcoming months. And we hope that you all could all be a part of it. So thank you again, Dr. Hill, and thank you everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, I appreciate you.
Great.